Good afternoon, Miss Gray. How we doing?
Hello, Mr. Bush.
In today's session, we're gonna talk about something that is very heartbreaking to you, and you spoke about it to me over the phone concerning your land that you and your family own.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, um, over a century ago, my great grandfather that had formerly been a slave um, in Hatchachubby, Alabama, which
Okay,
is a little city near Hurtsboro, Alabama, and Phoenix City, Alabama. And Phoenix City is right by Columbus, Georgia.
I see.
Um, so he had been a slave there, and after the Emancipation Proclamation and the freeing of the slaves, shortly after slavery, he was able to obtain 1,000 acres of land, and um, he had 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls.
Okay.
He sent the boys to college at
Really?
Tuskegee Institute because our great grandfather um, helped to build Tuskegee.
What was his name?
Um, he was named after the president Andrew Jackson,
Really?
and Andrew Jackson was actually a blood relative of his.
So let me get this right. What you're saying is that around 1863 63 through 68 maybe, your great grandfather obtained 1,000 acres of land
Yeah,
in Hatchachubby, Alabama.
yes, and he had, like I said, formerly been a slave there. So
Okay.
he was someone's property. He was cruelly mistreated. Now, right after he was released from slavery, um, his wife had been sold to a plantation in South Carolina. So he walked from Hatchachubby, Alabama,
I see.
all the way to South Carolina to get his wife. And then, of course, God, because my forefathers were Christian,
Okay.
and so God, in His awesome power, blessed him to be able to acquire the 1,000 acres, and it was for little to nothing.
So what I'm hearing is that you feel some type of pride that you're related to someone that was able to obtain 1,000 acres of land right out of slavery.
Yes,
How does that make you feel?
I feel great pride with that, and I also see the hand of God with it.
Okay.
So it's just a beautiful, miraculous story to me. So from a little girl, I always loved it.
Okay. So I gathered by the information you gave me concerning your family owning and pertaining to this land that recently court decisions came up.
Okay, so Hatchachubby is, if it has any historical bearing on the world, it was that the Creek Indians were there. So we also are partially Creek Indian.
Hmm.
And but the Creek Indians, hundreds of thousands of acres of land was stolen from them in Hatchachubby. At least they were swindled out of it.
So y'all are in relations to the Creek Indians? Is that what
Yes,
you're saying?
yes, we are.
Oh,
And we
wonderful.
had my great grandmother and her sisters, some of them, and they would go. There was a creek that actually ran through the property, and they would go down to the creek even if it was like a dusting of snow, because you don't get a lot of snow
Right,
there in
right, yeah.
Alabama. But if it got cold enough to get a dusting of snow or whatever, I've heard stories that they would go down to the creek and give birth there. That was a big, that's an
What a
Indian thing,
history, yes.
definitely. And of course, they would walk through the snow with no shoes on or whatever, or if it was really cold or frost on the ground.
You also told me that you recently visited the land.
Yes, I did.
So tell
So
me, Tell me about that.
Okay, so I kind of want to build a story for you. So Hatchachubby was a place where the Indians had been swindled out of their
I
land
see.
by the United States government.
Mm,
And so it's a big history there. And then my mother had a relative,
okay.
and that person will remain nameless to protect the guilty.
I understand. Understand.
But they tried to steal her portion of it. And they actually did for many years. Most of my life, my mother had been um, in great turmoil about it. She, would tell anyone that she possibly could, oh, this person stole my
Which
land. I
when
want my property.
you say turmoil, was she sad,
She
angry,
was
depressed?
sad, angry, depressed, all of the above.
Okay.
But I had to witness this, and this was something that it was just horrible to witness your parent, in that type of anguish. So, finally, last year, this particular person died.
Okay.
Okay, and so no one, because they had such a prominent role in the family, no one would dare to stand up to them. So the moment that they died, this person had children
Right.
and a wife, but they couldn't compare to
Yeah.
how menacing he was. So the moment he died, there were people that went into action, and they were taken to court. The courts in Alabama ruled that fraud had been done,
Okay.
theft of the land, um, and just in like a moment, I got a call from a relative and say, your mom's land, she's cried about, she's told, lamented with the family, telling everyone, um, she has her land, she's
Okay.
been named, and she's gonna get her land, and don't worry about it. So recently I took a trip down there, and there was no one was actually present on the property, but there was a church that my great great grandfather had donated to some people to build a church there. And then beside that, there was always a sign there that said our family's name. Well, when I went there to visit the land, because I do it from time to time,
Okay.
um, if someone else's name was there.
So, what you telling me? It's for a long period of time. Your family's name was on the property,
Mm-hmm.
but your recent visit
Yeah,
shows someone else owning the property. Maybe. How did that make you feel?
it felt I was devastated. I
Was
felt really devastated.
Were there any parts that you could have played um, in helping your mother gain what's rightfully hers?
Yeah, actually, I did try to help her facilitate her um, doing something with the property, positive.
Okay.
But this was the part that the reason why I wanted to talk to you. It angered me more that you could lament and cry over something almost 40 years. Almost 40 years, right?
It's a long time.
So you do that almost 40 years, and when it is literally God just lays it at your feet, you do nothing.
My goodness.
And that land meant a lot. When I said that my great great grandfather had 8 children, he had 4 girls and 4 boys. Well, the boys went to college. He didn't let the girls go. This man had been a slave. He had been cruelly treated. His wife, they went through so much. And so the first opportunity of his freedom, yes, he sent his boys away to college, but the girls, he was worried that they would be molested, raped, murdered. I mean, he just had no idea what would happen to
he's
them.
very protective
He
of
was
his
very
girl.
protective.
So what I'm hearing is that this land had great value, sentimental value to you as well.
It had great sentimental value to me, and just a few of my family members. Many of them, it meant nothing. They were like void of any seeing any value in something like that. And
No.
you can't make someone feel that if they don't.
That's true.
Um, but one of my great aunts said about her father, she was crying one day and she was about 98 years old crying. And she said, you don't know. No one knows who I would have been, who she would have been, and what she would have done in the world if Daddy would have allowed her to go to college.
Oh, okay.
And her being so old, and when she told that, when she was crying and telling me that, I was about 17 years old.
Okay.
And I remember saying, Aunt Minnie, he loved you.
Right.
Because he didn't give the boys more portion of the land than the girls. He gave everyone equal. And because of what he had experienced in his life, because of being born a slave, he wasn't going to let the girls leave home without being married.
So what would it be correct for me to say that the land was divided in portions, and how many portions was it divided into, and what was the acreage proportion, if you could remember?
I think it was like 120 something acres per person of our great grandfather's direct children, and then their children had portions. My mother's portion was larger than what her brothers and sisters would have been, because when she was a young girl, about 15 or 16, she helped take care of one of her great aunts, which was one of her grandmother's sisters.
Okay.
And she left my mother her portion, which she didn't have any children.
Really?
Yes. So my mother, her portion was a lot bigger than what it would have just naturally been divided into. Because she did bathe her, she fed her, she took care of her. Yeah.
So going forward, we talked a little a couple of weeks ago concerning the land, but going forward, is there anything you can do from this point to maybe ease your anger or disappointment in your mother not obtaining the land like you wanted her to?
No, there isn't anything. I'm not gonna dare blame myself because of her inability to act and to move. Um, the children of Israel, the Bible talks about, they weren't able to fully enter into God's rest because of their unbelief.
Okay, I see.
Okay, and so because she's a Christian, but she still didn't have the belief, and she didn't believe enough to actually move.
So you saying, what I'm hearing you saying is that by her being a Christian, she should have had the belief to move and to obtain what was rightly given to her.
Yes. And so what that says to me is, in my life, if something like that angers me, then I can't be that type of person that behaves that way.
I see. You
can only control your own self. When my father had a major stroke a few years ago, the therapist would always say, "Whose hand is that?" His left side was paralyzed, but his right hand worked. But he would, during therapy, do all kinds of stuff with his hand. Okay. He would place it somewhere it didn't belong or whatever, and the therapist would always say, instead of trying to remove his hand physically themselves, they would say, "Mr. Gray, whose hand is that?" He would say, "It's my hand," and then they would say, "Well, let it go." Yeah. So you only have control over your own body, over your own person, your own self. So I need to just make sure that I don't have those type of character flaws within myself, that I don't move and act appropriately when I need to.
If I could summarize what we've been talking to about in the last 5 minutes or whatever, it seemed like you've discovered your own insight into your anger and the ability to control it, and going forward, how you can apply it in the other areas of your life. Yeah. And I understand that. With all you're getting, get an understanding. So I have a great understanding about the reasons why my mother was unable to act. Right. Yeah. Okay. So this closes this part of the session, and but we will meet next week to going forward. And I feel that relationship wise, that you're beginning to open up more, and I think our relationship is going in the right direction. Where not only can you be helped through this therapy, you can help me with being a better person myself too, because we all have to look at aspects of our personality and anger and see what we can control and do better going forward.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that.
And I thank you also. And I'm grateful that you've helped me also to see that, like the scripture says, be angry and sin not.
Yes.
So,
Amen.
even with saying what could you do, what can you get
Right.
out of it, that really was helpful. So I just want to say thank you, Mr. Bush.
You're very welcome. Thank you.